You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. We're looking at once again for another morning of coverage and an hour of commentary here from Force 13 HQ is Typhoon Surigae, Philippine name Bising. It's got a much larger eye than when we last saw it. It was transitioning and it's been doing that, toing and froing and now moving very slowly as was forecasted, making its closest approach at this moment to Catanduanes, currently 129 miles clear of the island. That's the eye. Of course, gale force winds could be occurring on there right now, as they probably did for Samar earlier in the morning when the storm passed. Around about 125 miles from the coast of Samar as at its closest approach. But right now, in terms of its intensity, it looks like it could be on the rebound. The new eye there, much larger one. I mean, you could argue that it could be as much as 50 miles across. And the eye temperature is well into the positives. So all it would take is the eye wall to completely wrap up round there again, and we could be looking at the storm getting towards Category 5 status again. Right now we're giving it 145 miles per hour and a pressure of 927 after bottoming out earlier at 140 miles per hour. And that's at around 230 kilometers per hour sustained winds, and aren't we thankful that this storm isn't making landfall over there in the Philippines right now, which it could have done if it kept going west for another day or so. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team tonight. Tonight here, my local time, this morning in the Philippines. I'm joined by Codemo, David, Christian, Kenneth, Noah, and Xavier. Hello to you all.
Good evening.
Hello.
And good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with the person who's closest to the storm, and that would be Kenneth. We don't actually have the Philippines on the line just at the moment, but Kenneth, you've been watching this storm very closely. One of our top analysts. What's been occurring during the overnight hours?
During overnight, it's still undergoing our replacement cycle right now. It's just finished. From several hours ago, in microwave imagery, it shows the inner eye will completely disappear, which means it's fully been absorbed by the outer eye wall being faded out. And right now you can see it's been clearing out the eye. You can see the eye temperature is in the single-digit positives, and it will be a very dry eye. Although right now the infrared appearance is not that impressive still. Well, it will be more impressive. The microwave appearance, or usually the microwave appearance after our replacement cycle will be turning into better than the infrared appearance. And
Yes. Just the first visibles coming out there as well. This is on the rapid scan, so we'll keep up to date with that imagery as we get more frames from daylight there. A few black images at the beginning of that loop, obviously just before the sun rose. And it could be a very picturesque eye that appears out of this very shortly, even if it isn't as strong as it was earlier, but still the potential for intensification. How strong do we think it could get from here on out? That seems to have been the question all along, and here we are again asking that. Category 5, you guys think that's all possible?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a possibility, but it's really up to how it is able to maintain its eye and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, if it clears the eye down to warm medium gray, which would be over 9 degrees Celsius, and it keeps clearing that eye out, that it's rather circular, and keeps the negative 70s ring that it has been keeping for a long time now, then there might be potential for it that we, based on satellite, that we can fix the storm at 7.0, which would be 140 knots. Right now, I would say the potential for that is around 50-50.
I'll say it's more likely. Right now the shear is very low. The sea surface temperature is still very satisfactory for Surigae to re-intensify. Also, the poleward outflow and the jet interaction. Surigae is now ready to connect to the poleward outflow, the jet interaction entrance, which can give extra outflow to Surigae, which helps it to for the clearance of the eye. I'll say it can even be peaked, not even 160, 165, 175 is still likely.
Really? Wow.
Mm.
Let's take a look at the forecasts and the current warnings that are in effect, because that's rather important. Signal 2 warnings have been extended since our last live stream, so it's not just Samar and Catanduanes, it's been extended a little bit. Now covers the eastern coastline, really, of the Bicol region, Sorsogon, most of that province. Also the island of Biliran, interestingly, under a Signal 2 warning. Signal 1 still extending further west, now extending just about into the eastern extremity of Quezon, and also further north, Pelilio Island, and now for the very northern part of Aurora and into southern Isabela province of Luzon. As you can see on the right hand graphic, this is from the JTWC, and we'll get a close-up of this in a moment, but you can see quite clearly where the track's going, and there is still a little bit of a push towards the west, towards day 2 and 3, so tropical storm force winds will probably be felt on the peripheries, the coastline of northern Luzon, as the storm starts to round that curve, and it's been getting slightly more pronounced on recent model runs. I don't know if anyone has any input on that.
The joint
Yeah.
the joint typhoon warning said that they had the eye at 8 nautical miles, and Kenneth has provided some information that is being shown in the advisory by the centre. And Nathan, what direction did you say it was currently tracking? Slightly to the west, or would I be right to say northwesterly?
It's not moving very much at all in the last hour or two. If it's going to be any movement, it's probably north-northwest. And then it's probably going to be looking forward a similar element to what we're seeing on that forecast. And just want to point out once again the threat areas, the outermost outlines there are the radials for tropical storm conditions. That's gale force winds of 65 kilometers per hour sustained or higher. That's the red zones. So you can see still extending possibly over Samar right now, but definitely Catanduanes, and then later on you can see it up there towards the northeastern tip of Luzon, and then some of the islands offshore there as well. The storm will be weakening substantially by that point and will stay offshore, of course. But it will be interesting to see, because there is some uncertainty about this in light of how it's moving very slowly. It could steer just that little bit further to the west, which could increase the population in the tropical storm force wind field. But at this point, it's still, I think, fairly safe to say that we're not going to see any typhoon conditions along any coastal areas.
Yeah, that's pretty safe.
Let's see if we can get some more imagery just now.
And the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre is saying that it will be a gradual weakening, but not for probably another, 72 hours, or they're saying down to 95 knots by the 72-hour mark. And then the cross track spread to 156 nautical miles by the same time mark. The GFS model ensemble is the far right outlier, but again, it's the steering mechanism, and we know vertical wind shear is going to increase. I think it's 20 to 25 knots, but that is to the north or even northeast. So anyone along the coastal region of the Philippines, they can't take their eyes off this system yet.
Yep, just a message to the team that we're switching room here, and as you can see, the storm there wrapping around once again on the infrared. The eastern side really coming back on it again there with those higher cloud tops into the -70s once again there. So it looks like it's wrapping up here once again, and the eye temperature looking decent. The shape getting more round, would you say? And does that count for much?
I mean, yeah, the eye is very large, and it's about. There's only a little part of the eye that is actually cleared out, and I mean, the eye wall replacement cycle has been complete for several hours, but it takes a lot of time to warm so much of the atmosphere due to adiabatic compression, which it does through the eye, and that warms the eye. So it would probably take another few hours until we actually see how the full extent of the eye completely clearing out.
And how well does it correspond to the infrared imagery that we're looking at? Because if you, say, measure from the edges of the -70-degree cloud tops either side, that's about 70 miles. It's not that wide, is it?
Does somebody have microwave imagery? Because it is very, very large.
Yes, I can.
Oh yeah,
I
I
can
can show
share.
it.
As soon as we we'll try and get that image on screen once you guys put it through.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have it
And
there
then I
directly.
put.
Oh,
Yeah.
there it goes, two of them. So let's take a look at this just now. That is the microwave imagery. It looks to me that's sort of, what's that? Just over half of a degree longitude, which would be something like 35 to 40 miles, I think.
Note that the grid is 2 degrees per
Yeah.
line. Yeah, it's around
That's probably around 50
0.7
miles.
degrees, I would say. Yeah, as expected. Around
That's probably
0.7
around
degrees.
50 miles across.
And this is a fairly
Yeah.
recent microwave scan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
just
the
an hour
most
old.
recent.
2157C from SSMIS.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the storm's overall structure there in that image before we move on? The storm's overall image in the microwave imagery there, whether it tells any stories, what it might lead to.
I mean, the main story is that we have one big solid eye wall, and it doesn't appear to be there. There doesn't appear to be any concentric bands that could form a concentric eye wall. So we will probably now see one solid eye wall that will probably persist until the storm is dead.
And there was a
as an
period last night, local time, which was quite fascinating as well. I don't think we'll be able to show it just now, but you could really see those two eye walls on all the imagery that was available.
Yeah, that was quite a fascinating eye wall replacement cycle where actually on visible imagery you could really see those two eye walls competing for dominance. Here's a good picture of that.
Oh, you've got one. Let's see this. So just to illustrate what we were talking about there's an image of how it looked earlier. You can just about make out the outlines and the gap between those two eye walls, and of course the inner eye and the outer eye. And it was the one on the inside that was fighting. How long did it fight for before it gave up?
Pretty much for a day.
Yes.
Over a day.
A fair
For
amount
quite
of
a long
time,
time.
and now that is gone by the looks of things, and it looks like the storm could strengthen a little bit again. Alright, we're on YouTube and simulcasting on Facebook once again tonight, or this morning local time in the Philippines. We're on Force 13 Philippines on Facebook and on the Force 13 main channel on YouTube. Send a message in, start your message with Force 13 all in text. It will light up for us, and just directly through Facebook, and we'll pick up any of the comments there. So actually the one question that's just come in there as we're reading along. Cool Creeper Ryan says, given how the poleward outflow is weakening, could this not have a secondary peak and stall or weaken in intensity? So could this not have a secondary peak?
I'm saying no.
No.
The poleward outflow actually is strengthening instead.
That's what you said earlier,
weakening.
yeah.
Yeah. And let me see, there's the latest upper level winds.
Yeah, essentially
Okay.
we have.
Here's
Essentially
it.
we have. Yeah.
Here's the upper
ahead.
level winds. Okay, I
Oh, yeah.
show it. Yeah.
We'll get that in just
Yeah.
a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to flick between imagery. There's some more visible. Yes, so this is what we're looking at right now. It's a massive arrows and wind barbs there, Kenneth. Would you like to explain it to us?
Okay. So you can see those barbs are connecting to the subtropical jets. You can see there's so many flag barbs of over around 100 miles per hour winds, and you can see that this provides because it is still have some distance to the the jet region. It's not providing shear, but the polar outflow as an extra favorable environment for Surigae to further intensify. So pretty much we are seeing a secondary peak in the next 12 to 24 hours before it's getting too much that these polar outflow, these jet interaction, it turn from polar outflow into wind shear and weaken the storm after around 36 hours when the shear will start to skyrocket.
Now, Cool Creeper
And
Ryan
also-
came back on that comment, by the way, saying the JWC stated that the outflow is weakening from a trough.
That doesn't
That's
make
what
any
we
sense,
say.
actually.
Okay.
The trough
I'll
is
defer to
enhancing
you
the
two,
polar. The trough is enhancing the polar outflow. Essentially, what happens is we have anticyclonic momentum added to the jet. The jet intensifies, and that makes more anticyclonic momentum get evicted out from the tropical cyclone. Basically, constructive interference with the tropical cyclone and the jet. So both intensify.
Very interesting. There was another thing that just got. I think I saw something that just came in. I'm not sure actually. Okay, well that's that for now. Just a reminder on this storm, we're currently going with 145 miles per hour. That's around 230 kilometers per hour sustained winds, and is currently making its closest approach to Catanduanes. Let me just get the distances in the kilometers for everyone watching. From the center of the storm's eye, current distances from Catanduanes Island, the closest point, 206 kilometers. Get a few other locations. Legazpi City, 297 kilometers. Naga, 340. It's starting to get further away from Samar now, 218 kilometers. It bottomed out at about 200 earlier. From Batangas, 565. Manila, 571. Closest approach, it will probably get around 550 kilometers from Manila, maybe a little bit closer. and as it stands right now, just over 600 kilometers from Tuguegarao in Isabela province, which the storm will draw quite a bit closer to, could get within the 200 kilometer range there. And as of right now, the storm's movement, I can tell you, is pretty slow. It's hard to get a read, really, on how far it has travelled in the last, say, hour. It's probably something like 5 kilometers, not very far at all.
This is what we expected. We did expect this storm to slow down significantly. We were seeing this moving as super typhoon with winds of 185 miles an hour. This thing was moving around about 10 to 12 miles an hour. That has since halved, if not even more than that. We do think this is going to be a pattern that stays for the next day or two, but then by the time we get towards Tuesday and Wednesday, this will begin to pick up the pace as it makes that sharp turn eastwards, and we do not expect any areas after that to be seeing any significant or any impacts at all, really, once we get through that 2-day mark.
Yeah, and when you look at the larger scale satellite, it's pretty obvious why the storm has such a weak movement. We have this trough, and on the other side to the west of the storm is a ridge that tries to steer it into the Philippines, but this trough tries to steer it eastward, outward.
A tug of war, really.
And yeah, the net movement is basically nothing. That's actually a pretty similar steering influence to Hurricane Dorian.
You know, I've been thinking about that for a good while. I don't think it's really crazy to make that comparison because it does feel a lot like that.
Just not like over a landmass.
Just not the island
part. Yeah, a pretty typical trough and two high-level ridges. Their steering factor all cancels out and cause the storm itself to stall.
Let's take a look at the JTWC map again as we take the next question, which is about whether the storm could become a threat to Taiwan and the southernmost Japanese islands.
No.
Well, you say no, but on day 5, the edge of the gale radius is near the Daito Islands.
Yeah, okay. No, but essentially no to Taiwan. Maybe the gale radius gets close to some of the Japanese islands.
I'm sure they're rather used to it, very prone to typhoon conditions on those islands. But it is coming. Also, let's see. Oh, yes, I mean, just some people talking about how strong it was still. Have there been any changes in any of your thought processes as to the storm's peak intensity that we saw at points live on our coverage 1 or 2 days ago? It was it's still quite something to behold when you look back at it. I don't know.
I don't have made any changes in my mind about the peak intensity, at least.
So it sounds like they're pretty confident there, and the numbers we went with at the peak was 185 miles per hour and 895 millibars. We'll see whether that changes in the post-analysis. Would we say that Surigae is at least somewhat similar to Super Typhoon Songda of 2011? Kenneth, any ideas?
Let me retrieve this.
Yeah, I've.
Let me see.
I obviously know the name, but I forget the track of that one. So
the track
no help
is Category 5 northeast of Samar.
That sounds much like this storm. And just
I haven't tracked that one, so I can't give an answer to that.
Yeah, and just to review the warnings again for those who may be just joining us, this is from Pagasa Signal 2 warnings extending over a significant part of Sorsogon province, the coastal area, the ocean-facing coastal areas of Albay and Camarines Sur. Catanduanes, of course, Samar, the whole island, and the island of Biliran under signal 2 warning. Rather intrigued with that last one because it's probably the furthest away of any of the signal 2 areas. And signal 1 warnings extending as far south as still as far south as Dinagat Islands, which is just off screen, and extending through the whole of Masbate, through Burias Island, into the easternmost Quezon, and up northwards to Polillo, and onto northernmost Aurora province and southern Isabela. And those signal 1 warnings will probably extend throughout northeastern Luzon in the next 48 hours. Now let's take a look at another satellite variant on Christian's screen here. There's another look at the storm's progress. That one I think shows it off a little bit better than the imagery we've been showing.
The rainbow imagery is looking good too.
And that we can see if we can get a little read on the movement there as well. That loop goes on, let's see, we're talking just over 3 hours of imagery there. And that looks to me like a slight north-northwest overall. You can see it all wobbling around. It can get a little bit confusing, but I think that would be north-northwest.
Yeah, very northwest. Actually,
Yeah, I'm
Actually,
gathering
almost
northwest as well.
Definitely very much like not moving at all. So
Looks
What
to
is
be about.
that?
I'm
Yeah.
guessing about. Yeah, it's not moving. Well, it's not moving at all, but it's going very slightly northwest. Not very fast.
Yeah, very slow. With the warmest region wobbling.
And we don't know when it's supposed to pick up speed either.
We
No.
can guess. It's going to be very gradual. What we can say really is that right now is probably the slowest part. And it will pick up
Yeah, of
speed, but
course.
very gradually.
it will eventually move very fast upon being picked up by the trough. And there's a question in the chat from Cool Creeper Ryan who says, when this becomes extratropical, could this shoot off to Alaska or become a Pacific storm? I actually looked at this, and it won't shoot up all the way to Alaska as an extratropical cyclone, but it will become entrained in the jet and add energy to the jet. And that this will probably force some troughing into the western United States, which eventually makes some severe weather. So this typhoon is probably actually helping the severe weather season in the plains to get going.
I'm just having a little look now, just out of curiosity, and it looks like this is the latest GFS run, which, it's long range and it will change time and again. At the moment, it's blowing it up into a big extratropical cyclone off Canada. But that's in the distant future. That's the first days of May we're talking about there when that happens. So that's a little while off.
Yeah.
Looking
And
again
there's
at
no threat to
Christian's
Alaska.
imagery there. And again,
Sorry.
I'm just curious as to whether it's a different channel that you're looking at that's showing off the cloud tops more than the one that we have.
Let me just find out what this is. I'm guessing this is just. I don't know. It just says IR. So, I'm not terribly sure what to. This is just what I've found.
Okay,
That's
then.
what I know. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
But what you can see on this imagery is that there's a blow up on the western and, in fact, northwest and southwest, brimming up with -80s there for a time. They've started to disappear just a little bit, But what you have noticed now on the northeastern side is that it's really closed that gap of -70s, and I must say it's looking pretty good on that latest imagery, structure-wise. It makes you wonder what this thing's going to look like in a few hours.
Absolutely.
Probably
Just-
gonna see a very beautiful donut-shaped storm. I mean, it's already, but with the eye clearing out, that's gonna be a sight to watch.
And it will make another run at Category 5 status, no doubt. If you do have any questions for us, send them in whilst we're on the air. It's a great time to do so. We're here for the hour. Let's see if there's been any more that have come in here. I think you went with all the questions that we had just now. So to recap, the storm currently with winds of 145 miles per hour. Those are our estimates at the moment. JTWC, what are they running with right now? They're running with 140 miles per hour, actually. And just having a little look at what they're saying about it. They're saying it's moving northwestward at 5 knots in the last 6 hours.
Next update's going to be interesting too, because they have it decreasing down to 135, 110, gusting 135. But I'm just wondering if the system deepens, well, their forecast is going to change. But what percentages are we giving it on high range Cat 4?
High. High chance. But when did that inner eye die?
A few hours ago, like I think 4 or 5.
Because
around 4 hours ago.
It's just because on the 21Z JTWC update, which is what, 2 hours old or 3 hours, something like that, they still maintain that it's got an 8 nautical mile pinhole eye.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Wait, really?
Okay,
Wait, seriously?
That doesn't make any sense.
That is really weird.
I think they might need.
Yeah, but we got 2 very interesting questions. Wait, where are they? I can't find the questions, but they were in the chat.
I just thought I'd mention that. I'll just read some of the stuff off the prognostics from the JTWC whilst you look for that. Analysis indicates a slightly unfavourable environment with the low vertical... Slightly unfavourable. With the low vertical wind shear, 5 to 10 knots, and warm sea surface temperatures. In the Philippine Sea, offset by diminishing poleward outflow. They're saying that currently being suppressed by the mid-latitude trough migrating to the north. So that is going against what you said earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, it actually is, and you kind of see it on the outflow that is going directly to the north, but you can see that the outflow is kind of moving a bit more to the west. So I guess the JTWC is right. I think the trough might be moving a bit out of the storm's influence. But yeah, I found the questions.
Okay.
One was about, could this be a warning for the future Westpac season? I think no. This is just a storm
for 2021.
Just happened. Yeah, for the 2021 season. If the storm could be some kind of warning for the upcoming season, and I would think it isn't.
Yeah, I don't think we can really make a claim like that. What I was thinking about when this storm was first coming was the start of the 2000 season, which was Damray, which formed in the early days of May and became a Category 5, and the rest of that season I think was fairly tame. Oh no, there wasn't. There was a Category 5 landfall for Taiwan, but that was much later on in the season. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see. I think from what we deduced earlier when we were doing our predictions is that the early part of the season, June, July, will be fairly quiet probably.
Yeah, I saw that.
But
And
I
also
think-
another question.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also another question about that is the question I actually mentioned before the stream. Is Surigae currently displaying annular characteristics? So there are two
It's a
annular
good
characteristics.
question.
It's a good question, but it always comes up.
It does.
So there are two things that makes the storm annular, and you have to hit both criteria. So first you have a average or above average eye. That is clearly the case. And you have absolutely no banding features, and that is clearly not the case. We have two pretty significant bands on the north and the south, so no, it isn't an annular storm at all.
Just holding on Christian's imagery there, that's a great. I think that's probably the best way to look at the storm and try and figure out where the center of it is. You can see that the edges of the eye is spinning around that center, which is somewhere near the edge of the northern side of the opening. And it's very interesting to see how little it's moved in the last however long that imagery is, 1 or 2 hours on the rapid scan. But you'll also notice even on that imagery the shoring up of the northeastern side of the eye into the eye wall. And again, as we look on this imagery, let's see if we can get some latest frames when it appears in just a moment. Maybe not just now. Well, there's the JMA forecast for those who are concerned about that as well. They give it a massive 30-knot wind boundary. And there is the imagery that we were waiting for. And yes, still showing that the -70s are continuing to wrap around. However, the highest cloud tops appear to be diminishing a little bit. So given that, and given what we found out from the JTWC not long ago, what do we think about this storm? I'm sort of feeling like it's going to maintain for a good 12 hours now and just do nothing.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you there. I mean, as mentioned a couple of times, the eye is not like in the best condition. I mean, it could definitely wrap around, but I don't feel like it's really got it to the point where it's going to like intensify nor weaken too much. I mean, the water temperatures are really nice for the system, so I think it's gonna kind of just stay how it is, move quite slowly, and just kind of stay like that.
I feel like it will intensify now until it clears out the eye, and then it will maintain for some time and slowly weaken.
It will be a slow weakening phase, surely.
Yeah.
Just to give people just a reminder of distances from land areas right now. The closest point on Catanduanes is around 209 kilometers away. To give you a few locations there, Virac is 240 kilometers away. And then towards Naga, which is 343, Legazpi City 304, and onto Samar, that's still fairly close at around 227 kilometers. The offshore island of Patag is closer at 223. And that puts the storm right now somewhere around 14.3 degrees north, 126.3 degrees east. And all indications right now showing that tropical storm conditions, gale force winds, are probably occurring on the whole of Catanduanes and were occurring and possibly still for 1 or 2 locations on Samar. But as we said before, if you have any questions for us during this discussion, send in your messages. Once we finish up in 20 minutes time, we'll be handing it back to the automated stream. If you're watching on our YouTube live link, you can go there at any time, youtube.com/force13/live. If we're live at any time during the year for anything, there will be a video there that you can take a look at. During the middle part of the season, when it gets a lot busier, we will probably be running automated services throughout hurricane season in the Atlantic and the typhoon season. So that's something we'll be looking towards. A question there: given how this storm is sluggish, could upwelling be an issue?
Right now, in the next 24 hours, I'll say, even though it is in a very slow movement, I don't think it's really likely, given that the ocean heat content, not the sea surface temperature, the heat content is very high at around 100. That means in the deep waters, it is still very warm to support a tropical cyclone. But as they move northward with a very large size and is very big and slow movement, we may see that in the next 48 to 72 hours. This is the most highest probability that upwelling will kicks in.
And we got another annular question.
Oh, right.
Is it possible this could become an annular cyclone? Yeah, it is generally possible, but very unlikely with the two bands that we have. Even though it looks kind of circular when you look at it on satellite imagery, but when you look at the microwave imagery, there's clearly still very apparent banding.
We've actually had a weather report from our from a viewer on the Philippines channel on Facebook, which we certainly appreciate that. And as long as it's safe to do so, please send in your reports on what you're experiencing around the storm. Karen says the weather in their locality, northeastern part of Samar, is still stormy with gusty winds and moderate to sometimes heavy rain as of 2 minutes ago. So thank you for that report. And that is pretty much what we expect there. Do let us know if there's any reports of damage over there. I imagine that damages, certainly from wind, would be minor. I'm not sure whether there'll be any flooding concerns. We've not heard anything about that so far.
And wave height, according to the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre, is down to 50 feet.
Now that's at sea, isn't it?
Yes. I think it was, 58?
I have no idea. I've not been looking at those numbers. But I'd imagine there would be a modest storm surge accompanying this.
And Christian, if you're still on the other website, I've got the rainbow imagery.
Yep. I'm looking at that right now.
Is.
Yeah.
So that's a rainbow imagery loop covering probably 3 or 4 hours there. And shows the general trend on how it's been northwestwards slowly. It's in that 4-hour period, it's probably traversed equivalent of the distance of the length of Catanduanes Island, which isn't particularly far.
And to our viewers, I am currently showing at times the imagery for the typhoon on the AU channel.
Indeed,
But
he is.
But Nathan, it's another impressive system.
Oh,
but
it's a big start to the weather. I mean, you know, we were talking about the records that it's set for April being one of, if not the uncontested strongest storm of an April in the Western Pacific, or possibly worldwide. Not sure on that.
We had Monica, that was stronger in April. So worldwide, no, but
yes. Now you see, I think Devon was disputing that the other day when we were talking about it, but I'm not sure. Monica's certainly up there as well, though, definitely.
I think Monica has 879 millibars officially.
I can't remember. really can't. What are the chances that this storm can make landfall? Very, very low. But as we know, it's not about the center of the storm making landfall. That's more symbolic than anything else. What we really look at are the wind fields. You know, if you're in any of those red outlines, that's gale force winds making landfall, and you know, you can call that a landfall, I suppose. It depends on your definition, but the purest way of looking at it would be the center of the storm moving over land. But that doesn't mean much in terms of it's not very helpful information in terms of preparedness and the effects of the storm.
Nathan, something that we haven't touched on is the rainfall factor.
Yeah, well, we were just alluding to it a moment ago, but rainfall was trending downwards. I'm just going to have a look again, and hopefully I'm not terribly surprised by what I'm about to see. So it's expecting probably a further 200 to 300 millimeters of rain for the Bicol region, the southeasternmost part of Luzon, around Legazpi and Naga, is probably going to get the highest amount of rain from the storm anywhere. And as I've mentioned in previous streams, it's really, this could have been dreadful if the storm was a couple hundred miles towards the west, because it's moving very slowly at this stage. And right now, in some of those areas at sea underneath the storm, it's probably going to dump over 1,000 millimeters of rain in total. But as it is right now, maximums 200 to 300 further millimeters of rain for eastern Bicol, and for the northern tip of Luzon, maybe 100 to 150. A lot of people were asking in previous streams about western sides of Luzon, places like Pangasinan and also the Manila area, of course. We're really looking at possibly less than 50 millimeters on the western side. It's going to be not particularly wet for those areas. And we jump back to Christian's imagery here. Is this regularly updating?
Yes.
Let's
just
see here.
updating.
I'm just trying to see here. I'm not.
I've got the links.
It's regularly updating.
I've got the links in the OBS, and I do refresh. So I think it's every 20 minutes or something. But
yeah, another question: if the storm makes landfall in northern Luzon, how strong do you think it would be? Well, let's just consult that track forecast again. JTWC at its closest approach has it at around 185 kilometers per hour sustained winds there, but that's way out towards the waters. You can definitely see the curve back towards the west a little bit on that track forecast, just as that ridge sticks out a little bit more. Do you think there's any what on earth is that? Do you think there's any possibility that it could be underestimated and the storm might get shunted further towards Luzon?
I hope not.
Because we know how susceptible that area is to typhoons.
Yes, definitely. It's like it does appear that we could be seeing a close call. I mean, the cone it does look like it's going to be staying off. The track could be shifting west, but there has been a pretty good consensus as of late that it will be staying a good deal off, so that way Luzon and the other areas in northern Philippines shouldn't. And not saying for certain, I'm just saying shouldn't be seeing typhoon winds from this system at all. Tropical storm force winds, of course, that is very much possible with the immense size of the system. It's also pretty large already with its eye and its size in general. So definitely something to look out for regardless, because of course there can always be changes with models and develop conditions that it's in. So we're hoping that this does take that track away and then turn eastward sooner. But of course, that is something we will have to monitor.
Could the eastern eye wall open again, as it's a bit fragile?
No, it's actually been fixing. I think it will be close. It is now closing up the eastern eye, which is the weakest one.
Okay.
As you can see in latest frames, it's more the CDO is more axisymmetric. So I think it's the same to the mid levels that the whole eye wall will be just axisymmetric as well.
If this storm does manage to re-intensify, how intense do you think it will be? Now, they did say intense. Given that this storm has a larger eye and possibly a larger influence, do you think there could be pressures tumbling again?
Of course, there is the chance that we do see re-strengthening. If that's the case, then we should be seeing the pressure drop as well. I don't think we're going to be seeing so much as a large pressure dropping. The fact that we are seeing, we're not seeing the explosive intensification that we saw that helped bring Surigae up to 185 to begin with.
Yeah, but given that it peaked at 895 by our estimates, we now have it at 927. Do you think it could be possible that we are underestimating how intense the storm might still be? I'm just an open question for anyone, really.
Not exactly, actually. Anything actually between 185 and 190 is perfectly acceptable, given that the 9Z pass of this map reveals around 180, 185 intensity. Well, depends how you treat that information. And that pass at 9Z is more reliable than that at 21Z, which the gain radius is a bit skeptical. What its map show is a bit skeptical. So it depends on how you treat it, information you have, especially this map pass, or else actually I think 185 is pretty much the base estimate. I think it is good enough to call.
All right, we had another
As a good
message
TCAS.
on the Facebook stream. I think it's Brigitte, who says that they're from San Andres Catanduanes. No flooding so far, but the rain is heavy. Yes, that's probably going to be the bigger concern there. And how is Pampanga and Bulacan affected? Those areas, I think, both on the western side of Luzon, and mentioned earlier, there's probably not going to be very much going on there. No tropical storm force winds and probably less than 50 millimeters of rain. So that's what it looks like for those areas. Let me just double check. Bulacan, a little bit further towards the east, actually. That area could get a little bit higher rainfall, actually, maybe up towards 100 millimeters. I doubt they will put Signal 1 in place there. Not unless this storm jogs westwards much more than we expect. Really don't think so. There was more questions, less relevant questions actually, as to are we doing Hurricane Week this year? We will be doing a celebration of 10 years of Force 13 this year, actually, at the end of November, because that's how old we will be by then, which is quite remarkable. So that's when we'll be having a lot of festivities, I should think. And what can we expect? When can we expect the MJO swinging into the Atlantic?
How long is the ECMWF ensemble forecast? How long does it time? Because it won't be long. It certainly shows on the ECMWF forecast, and that's also the reason why we on the US team are generally expecting an active May for severe weather, because when your MJO is in phase 8, 1 or 2, you're usually looking at a very deep troughing in the western US and very zonal jet.
Will Surigae have any problems with dry air? Is another question there. I'm not seeing it.
But at the time, not. But I don't. Later on, it could ingest some dry air when it makes an exotropical transition.
Yeah, much later on. And is there a chance it will still landfall in Luzon? Very, very low chance. Earlier model runs, though, took it very close to Luzon as a possible direct hit, if not a landfall. So I'll keep watching very closely if you're up there along the coast of northernmost Aurora and the whole of Isabela province. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Is this the first and last storm in April in the Western Pacific? That's an interesting question. It probably will be.
Yeah.
April storms, you don't usually get many, and if you do, it's probably just one.
The one that intensifies to 160 knots.
This one was quite a lot, definitely. But there we have it. So to recap the information as we're getting towards the end of our stream here, this storm currently has winds of 145 miles per hour and a pressure of 927 millibars. That's the latest from our estimates here. JTWC currently going with 140 miles per hour sustained winds, and that's both of those numbers are around 230 kilometers per hour or a little less. And that, of course, is sustained winds. Estimated rainfall, as we saw, probably a further 200 to 300 millimeters for parts of eastern Bicol. 1 to 200 millimeters for the rest of the areas in signal warning zones. And for areas outside of signal warning zones, generally speaking, up to and possibly just above 100 millimeters of rain expected from here on out. So that's, of course, adding on to anything that you've already received from the storm so far. Just to go back to those panels again, just to give you that visual depiction. Well, on the right hand side you can see Christian's imagery once again, but I should bring it back to the JTWC forecast. There it is. And the signal warning. Signal 2 still in effect right now for Samar, also for the island of Biliran, and then also for the peripherals along the eastern part of Bicol, the ocean-facing sides of Albay, most of Sorsogon, and Camarines Sur. Catanduanes, of course, and Signal 1 warnings extending still from Dinagat Island all the way up north there to Isabela in one way or another, missing out a lot of Aurora province and Quezon as well, and the Polillo Island also has Signal 1 at this point. I'm not sure if there's any quick questions here at the end. Actually, yes. When do we think the next tropical when do we think the next tropical cyclone with 3 eye walls will occur? It's a very specific question. Anyone want to even try that?
It might be in the southern hemisphere. We've still got 3 weeks yet. And we could see something down probably in a week's time in the Fiji region.
Yes,
the models clearly showing up. My eyes are on the cold sea at the present time, but as we approach the end of April, we've still got another week yet on top of this one. Then we move into May, and I think the southern hemisphere is going to finish with a bit of a bang.
All right, we say goodbye to the team at this point. Thanks very much for taking part with us tonight, team.
Welcome.
That's been good.
Yep,
Has
and
been a
I'm
good
sure
talk.
we'll see them all again very soon. There will be more updates coming up on the Force 13 channel. We have a scheduled update coming up in, I think, 3 hours' time on our main YouTube channel. Just a regular update on the storm, and we will continue pushing those out for the foreseeable. Not sure when our next live commentary will be. We've not got any scheduled for tomorrow yet. But we'll see if that changes, and you can check for updates on our social media platforms and on our community chat in our Discord server down the bottom of your screen there, discord.gg/force13. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter as well under the same name, of course. And for our Philippine team as well, they're working very hard on Force 13 Philippines on Facebook. That's where we've also been simulcasting tonight. It's been nice to have you on board, of course, this morning local time now as it reaches 8 a.m. But that's it from us here. The storm will start to pull away from Catanduanes in the next few hours, already is doing so from Samar, but probably flooding risks and high rainfall amounts will be the biggest risks for those areas moving forward. Until next time, that's it from us. Goodbye.